What's up, everybody? Take a look at that. Is that not absolutely gorgeous? The Sony 400mm 2.8. This lens is everything that everybody says it is. I'm gonna give you my thoughts on it, why I bought it, or why I sent it back, what I shoot with it, and how much I enjoyed using it coming right up. Hey everybody, my name's Frank Donardi and I own my own business, Donardi Visual Productions. Make a long story short, I worked for a landscaping company for 20 years and about 5 or 6 years ago, one of the customers calls me up and says, Frankie, I just got my son a drone, can you help him fly it? I ended up helping this 13-year-old boy fly a drone. I fell in love with the darn thing. I got one a few days later, got my FAA license shortly after that. I started a small business. Make a long story short, a few years later, I leave my full-time day job of 20 years. I run my own business now. I make my own schedule, and I'm happy to say that in 2022, it was the first time I had ever made over 6 figures in a year, and I'm hoping 2023 is going to be the same. For my business, I shoot anything from portraits to weddings to promo videos to golf courses to construction sites, food, restaurants, podcasts, you name it, I do it all, both photo and video. If you're looking to get into this business today, you need to be able to do both. If you'd like to know a little bit more about my business, check out this sit-down interview I did with Tony and Chelsea Northrup. I talk about how I started my business, how it's going, and what I'd like to do in the future. I am a Sony man through and through. First camera I got after I flew my drone was a Sony 5100, I believe. I had no idea what ISO was. I didn't know what APS-C versus full frame was. Luckily enough, I've learned all those things and I've learned them right here on YouTube. My current camera setups are an A7S III, recording right now on an A7 IV with the 24-70 G Master 2, shooting an S-Log 3 if anybody's wondering, in 4K. And I also have this A9 right here. I'll tell you why I don't think I need the A1 for this lens coming up, by the way, also. And I have a variety of lenses that cover me from 14mm to 600. Let's talk about why I bought this camera lens. So one of my best friend's son, Max Novak, shout out to Max if you're watching this, was playing high school football here in Connecticut this past year. His team ended up winning a couple playoff games and played in the state championship. But to back it up a couple games, I went and shot a game at night for them with my A9 and the Sony 200-600. Now let me tell you, if you're watching a video about a lens this expensive, you probably know the difference between the two lenses. Shooting those games at 12,800 ISO, 16,000 ISO. The photos to me, they just looked terrible. The players thought they were cool. The coaches thought they were good. The parents thought they were great because they're just used to seeing iPhone photos. But for people like us, the difference is huge. The photos were so noisy. They were so grainy. I tend to underexpose my images, so to bring them back in post was... The shadows, they just looked awful. And when the team had made the state championship game, I said, I'm gonna get the Sony 400mm 2.8 because I wanna see what this lens is all about. And let me tell you, the hype is true. What the people talk about this camera lens, all of it's true. So when I ordered this lens, the box got damaged in transit from B&H and it was out for delivery for 3 days but never dropped off at my house. I had to go to the FedEx location in South Windsor, Connecticut, show them all my stuff, give them my ID, say, I need this package because it was literally the day before the game. I need this camera lens. I bought it specifically for something to shoot tomorrow. Can you please help me? And luckily enough, they were able to go in the back. I had to wait there for an hour or so. It was like 9 o'clock at night. They come and they bring me this box that was damaged on the outside. And of course, everything was fine inside the box with the, Pelican type case that Sony ships this thing with. But when I saw my FedEx driver, like next week, I said, bro, if that ever freaking happens again, leave my damn package for me. Why the hell would it go back there? I was so pissed off. Also, another reason that I bought this camera lens was because I shoot some professional soccer for the Hartford Athletics here in Connecticut. And those are typically night games. And again, using the 200-600, just the photos, they're okay. They have a little better light up there. They're okay, but they're nothing like this would provide me with. And also, I love to shoot wildlife. I used to shoot a ton of wildlife. I've got a almost 18-month-old baby girl now, so I don't get out of the house to do much free time photography, but I love to shoot it. Honestly, a lot of my great wildlife photographs have come from my driver's seat, so I'm like, all right, cool, I can just, shoot from this thing out the window. But I have been out shooting wildlife over the past month with this lens, and I'm gonna start to go over football photos now and then wildlife photos coming up, and I'm gonna talk a lot about this lens. Let's get into the football photographs. So the football team ended up making the state championship game and they played at a beautiful college up here in Connecticut. And this was my first experience using this lens. And let me tell you, it is incredible. So let's get into these photographs from the football game. The first thing that I noticed was the difference between shooting at 6.3 versus 2.8, not only for ISO reasons, but for background separation. The background separation that you get from this 400-2.8 is insane, especially if you're a little closer to the players. It makes such a big difference. The sharpness of the photographs, even just in the back of the camera with this crappy LCD, or you know, even better looking through here, was I could tell a difference between the 200 to 600 and the 4.8. The colors, they're absolutely gorgeous that come out of this. The autofocus is insane. I consider my 200 to 600 to have pretty darn good autofocus, but this is a little bit snappier and definitely works better. The counterbalance that comes from this lens with their new design, where Sony put most of the elements back towards the rear of it, a lot of people talk about that, and it's true. This camera and lens really balances out nice. I was more than able to handhold this lens. I did it for the whole football game, and never did I feel my arms get tired. I mean, if you were holding up this camera for, let's say, 30 or maybe approaching like 45 seconds, your arm would start to get sore and you'd want to give it a little bit break, but never was I not able to handhold it and get those moments that I was looking for. The eye autofocus worked great with this. So those players, you know, they've got their helmets on and they're dark in here, but a lot of times I was able to nail focus right on the eye, which I thought was amazing. I didn't know how good it would work under those kind of conditions, but it worked really well. Don't get me wrong, there are times when it couldn't do it, but there were a lot of times that it could. The difference between shooting at 2500 ISO or 3200 ISO versus 12,800 or 16,000 is amazing. It is such a big difference. These photographs, or the photographs that come from a camera lens like this, they really stand out. People look at the photographs and definitely notice a difference. If anybody's got any kind of eye for a good photograph or appreciates a good photograph, even they will notice a big difference between the 200 to 600 and the 2.8. Now let's talk about wildlife, which is a big reason why I would have a camera lens like this. I love to shoot wildlife. I used to do a lot of it. I'm married now with a mortgage payment and a 17-month-old baby girl, so getting out and shooting wildlife isn't something that's always available to me. But since I got this, I've definitely made some more time to get out and shoot with it because I wanted to know what it was all about. And we're gonna talk about some of my wildlife photographs. Some concerns that I had with the 400, actually the main concern that I had with a 400 2.8, let's say versus a 600 f4 is this going to be long enough? The 600 f4, if I was only shooting wildlife, yeah, I would probably get the 600 f4. But because what I do for a living and the versatility that I could have with a 400 versus a 600, I just have to go with this lens. So pretty much the same storyline as the football game. When you are able to shoot at a shutter speed, now most of the wildlife you're shooting, you know, during golden hour, or, you know, I even shoot photographs during the day because if that's the only time that I can get out, that's when I want to get out. But being able to shoot at 1/4000th of a second, 1/6400th of a second, even 1/8000th of a second at like 320 or 400 or 500 ISO at 2.8 is so awesome. I mean, if I wanted to shoot those numbers with my other camera, you know, I'm looking at being at like 4000 ISO, 5000 ISO, and those just aren't clean images. The images that you're going to get from this are so much better. So let's put a few photos on the screen here, and I'm going to talk about these photos and give you a little bit of the story about them and what I thought and how the 400mm 2.8 and how the A9 handled them. Now, I haven't had a whole lot of time to get out and shoot with this 400, but I definitely made some time to do it. So we're gonna go back to December 12th, just a couple days after I got this lens here, and let's talk about a few photographs. This first photograph is a great egret in flight here at Rocky Neck State Park. We're at shutter speed 1/12,800th at 2.8 at ISO 400. This is just a nice everyday photograph, beautiful bird in flight right here. But with shutter speed like that and such a low ISO, you're going to get such a sharp photograph, which this, for a bird in flight, is super sharp. You know, these birds don't move too fast, but really nice photograph. And how lucky was I? All the times in photography we complain that things don't go our way. This great egret did a little bit of a loop and kind of came down and landed, I wouldn't say right in front of me, but maybe 100 feet away. But I was able to get this beautiful photograph. Now, I had to lower the shutter speed because the bird went into a less lit area here. So we're at 1/4000th of a second, ISO 400 at 2.8. Most of these photographs are shot at 2.8. You know, if you've got a 2.8 lens on 400 millimeters, why not shoot it at 2.8 all the time? Although I will say, sometimes if you are close enough to the subject, 2.8 is too shallow of a depth of field. I was trying to shoot a hawk that was sitting on a power line that was just above my car. And, you know, this is a road, not a very busy road, but I'm pulled over and, you know, you don't have a whole lot of time to do it. So I get my settings all set up. I shoot at 2.8. I get the focus point right in the belly. Then I got home. I look at the photographs and its face was totally out of focus. The belly was super sharp, but the face was not. And we all know shooting photographs like this, it's all about the eyes of the subject. On to our next photograph here. Here's the same bird coming in for a landing. It's got the same settings that it had before, just showing off those beautiful wings and even getting the slightest bit of light that is just beaming through those beautiful white feathers right there. Now this photograph I absolutely love. I know ducks are somewhat easy to shoot, especially mallards, but I've got a thing for these male mallards. So look at the colors on this bird here. This is shot at 1/6400th of a second, ISO 400 at 2.8. Now the raw file here, I don't know if I have it saved anywhere, but the raw file, this was a pretty dark photograph. This bird is pretty backlit here, but the dynamic range that I was able to pull out of it and get these colors back, I mean, I love this shot. I think this is such a great shot. Here we are with a great blue heron that was hanging out just in the tall straw. Not a bird that's in motion, so you know we don't have to use super high shutter speed, but I shot this at 1/5000th of a second at ISO 400. I mean, you know, if you've got the availability to shoot at such a high shutter speed and have such a clean image, why not do it? A couple days later, here I am driving down the road and we've got a red-shouldered hawk on a power line. We're at 1/500th of a second, ISO 320. Again, this bird was backlit and it was pretty dark when I brought it into the computer, but I was able to bring back the colors nicely on it. I can't stand squirrels. I don't photograph squirrels, but this lens was pretty new to me still at the time. This is December 13th, and this squirrel was just hanging out on this little tree branch on the side of the road, and I said, I need something to photograph. So photograph this. We're at 1/640th of a second, ISO 320. This is actually shot in crop mode, so it's 600 millimeters at 2.8. Now, this image is technically only 10 megapixels when you shoot in that crop mode, but looks pretty darn good. Here we go again with another beautiful male mallard shot. And the thing that makes this photograph for me is the weather. Again, I don't get much time to go out and shoot wildlife, but it was just kind of sprinkling out and I said, man, I'm gonna go to the state park that's down the road from me and I'm gonna go see if I can find anything. And what worked out really nicely for me is it was just after a couple days of rain. So the water was flooding the natural waterways there and it was coming up to the road. And when I drove in, these ducks were like swimming almost on the road. So I parked my car and I kind of walked around where I was hidden in the tall grass. And when I came out from the tall grass, I was ready to shoot. The birds did exactly what I thought they would and they spooked and they started to fly. And I locked on and nailed focus on this male mallard and ripped off about 30 or 40 shots and just got this beautiful action shot here. This is at 1/4000th of a second. Now this is 2000 ISO because it was kind of a gray day, but what a fantastic sharp image. I loved this photograph. I posted it on my social media and people absolutely loved it. Here we are just a couple hours later that day. I was driving on the road and there was some marshland on the left side and I saw this great blue heron and pulled off and got a shot. This is at a 6400th of a second shutter speed and ISO 1000. I didn't need to shoot him with those high of settings for each, but I think that this was a quick moment for me. I didn't have a whole lot of time to make a decision here, so I just wanted to get down and grab the photograph. And then here's another photograph from that same area of this great egret. This is a 1600th of a second and 250 ISO, more of normal settings for a bird that would just be walking like this. Here we got a beautiful red-shouldered hawk, again sitting on a power line, and this photograph will relate to what I learned from the other photograph of the red-shouldered hawk that I was trying to shoot on the power line at 2.8. This photograph is at 1/1600th of a second, ISO 320, but shot at 5.6. When I saw this hawk sitting there, it was very close to me again. I said, man, I can't shoot this at 2.8 or it's gonna be out of focus again if I focus anywhere that's not on the eyeball. So I played the safeguard here, went with 5.6 and got this beautifully sharp photograph here. Now this photograph I'm gonna brag about a little bit. This is one of my most favorite wildlife photographs I've ever gotten. I've always had a little bit of a thing for the hooded merganser. I've never had a good photograph of one. I was out shooting photos with my buddy Joe, who actually rented the 600 f4 for his Sony A1 a few weeks ago. We met up and we went to a couple different spots. We were at this state park again, this one that I usually go to that's just about 10 minutes from me. And there were some hooded mergansers in the wetlands area that we were watching. We started chatting up, and next thing you know, I hear the flaps of the wings, and these birds are coming at us. I pulled up that Sony A9 and that 400mm as fast as I could. I locked focus on this bird, and I got one of the most beautiful wildlife photographs I have ever taken. I love this photograph. It is tack sharp. It shows some beautiful colors from this bird. And this is a photograph that would probably be on my wall someday. Now, I wasn't exactly prepared for this photograph as far as camera settings go. This was shot at 1/1600th of a second at 250 ISO. If I knew that this bird was going to take off and fly at me, I probably would have been around a 3200th of a second, around 400 or 500 ISO. But when I put the camera down at the park and I look on the back of that screen and I saw these photographs, I knew that I got lucky enough to just nail focus on this, and I couldn't wait to get home and edit this photograph, and I absolutely love it. I even think that one day I might sell one of these photographs here. I posted this on my social media accounts and people absolutely loved it. So this photograph is in my heart. Here's another photograph that I love. I had gone out and met up with a friend that afternoon. I had to drop something off to him. And the area that we live in is by the Connecticut River. There's a lot of wildlife and birds around here. I said, I'm gonna kind of take the long way home and see if there's any bald eagles around. There's a place called Tiffany Farms out here on Old Lyme. And when I was driving by, I was looking at it, and right away I noticed 2 bald eagles in a tree that were just right over the old farmhouse. Got my pulled over on the side of the road, got the camera, hung it out the window, got the settings ready, went down the road where the eagles were, turned around, came back, and I was able to snag several photographs of the eagles just hanging out in the tree. Then a car was coming down the road, and they were kind of looking at me like, you know, what the heck is this? There's a camera lens out the window. So that car slowed down and I think spooked the eagle. I was ready, I was looking, and as soon as that eagle took off, I was on that A9 shutter, and I was able to snag this photo. And again, this is a photo that I love, and it's so sharp. This is at 1/2000th of a second at ISO 640. You're gonna notice some of these photos, most of these photos are all on gray days. The weather around here has been so crappy recently, but I was ecstatic to be able to get a photo like this. And again, this photo on the back of the camera was pretty dark, but I was able to bring it back very nice in post. Just look at the eye of this juvenile bald eagle. I mean, that is just gorgeous. And here's the last couple photographs I'm gonna talk about. I got this photo today. This is a great blue heron sitting on a post that was in the Connecticut River. I was able to pull up and get relatively close to this bird. It was just hanging out there. This photograph was shot at 1/640th of a second at 160 ISO, and nothing crazy here, but just a really nice photograph of this great blue heron. Beautiful eye detail, nice colors on a cloudy day. And I also got a photo of this bald eagle today. This was pretty cool because I had seen it from a distance, and I was on this little back road that leads you to a spot where a boat launch is on the Connecticut River, and I saw this eagle and I said, I'm gonna hang out here and wait. And you know, again, luckily enough, and all the times we complain about photography, this bald eagle was circling around and ended up coming right at me. And I was able to snag this photograph here, and I'm super happy with this. I posted it on my Instagram this afternoon, and again, this is a photograph, and just like the eagle diving off the tree that you saw just a couple photographs ago, this is a photograph with my toddler in the back seat. So I'm just hanging out the window grabbing these photographs here. So, you know, I get a lot of good photographs just hanging out the driver's side of my car, and I hope that that can continue. I've got an eye for these animals, like most of us do who are going to watch this video, but you can spot these things from you know, half a mile down the road almost. You can see a hawk or an eagle just hanging out in the tree. Now I'm going to talk about why I feel the A9 is still perfectly suited for this camera lens right here. Only being 24 megapixels, yeah, the A1 is 50 megapixels and shoots 10 frames per second more, which I don't feel that I need. I feel like 20 frames per second is pretty darn good. But only having 24 megapixels, with this lens, this camera still produces, I think, really, really sharp images. So sharp that when I put them in the computer and I start editing them, I would crop like I normally would on my 200 to 600, but then I can crop a little bit more and I can crop a little bit more, and the images are still so sharp. The glass that they put in here, I guess, is amazing. And just being able to shoot at such a lower ISO, you're able to keep these images so beautiful, so sharp, and so clean, even when you really zoom in on them. Having a 1.4 tele would be great on this. I don't know if I want to try the 2. I've heard you lose kind of a substantial amount of sharpness. Maybe not substantial, but enough to notice. So I'd love to try the 1.4 tele on this, but I am more than fine just shooting 400 millimeters. And now here's the unfortunate news. I'm not gonna be able to keep this lens. Honestly, at the moment, it's too expensive. I bought this used at B&H for $9,200, which is a freaking fantastic deal for this lens right here. It's used and it's in decent condition. It's got a couple marks here and there, but whatever. I don't care about that. I've got another baby coming. My wife and I were never super happy with me driving around my little Hyundai Elantra with our daughter in it. So to have another child in that car is not going to be fitting. So I ended up having to buy a truck recently. Granted, I didn't have to buy a brand new truck, but I did. So now we've got a truck for our 2 children and also have a truck for just our normal everyday use for my Home Depot runs and bringing garbage up and down the road, whatever it may be. I had to make a decision that was better for my family. So there is no doubt in my mind that I will own this lens someday. Unfortunately, now is not the time, but I love everything about it. I got to get ready to pack it up and ship it to B&H. I hope you found this review somewhat useful. I've watched a lot of reviews about this 400 millimeter here, and they were all good. I don't think I found anything that talked maybe as in-depth and actually getting to use it in a real-world situation that I did. I'm sure there's some out there, but you know, guys like Jared Polin and the Northrops and everything, their reviews are fantastic. But for just an everyday guy, this is a decent video, and I hope you enjoyed it. So thanks so much. If you have any questions, please ask.